All right, root cause analysis. In this episode, we are going to define it. We are going to reference a bunch of material, books, articles, some websites, and we're going to talk about how root cause analysis should be done. We're going to talk about some of the pitfalls so you can avoid them, and we're also going to talk about how it supports continuous process improvement, which is the foundation of a safety management system, which is the topic that kicked off the entire series of episodes ending in this one. Yes, safety management system. So get ready to take some notes. We've got a lot of information to cover in this episode.
Welcome to the Safety Pro Podcast, powered by iReportSource, helping you manage safety one episode at a time. With the constant regulatory and workplace culture challenges businesses face, we'll provide you with all the relevant information necessary to achieve a safer, more productive workplace. No management theories, platitudes, or guru speak, just actionable info you can use right away. Now here's your host, the Safety Pro himself, Blaine Hoffman.
Welcome back to another episode of the Safety Pro Podcast. As mentioned in episode 81, what is systems thinking? And of course, we talked about continuous process improvement, PDCA, that whole cycle. I'm going to talk about root cause analysis, or RCA. Of course, another aspect of a systems approach. So we're going to define it and talk about how it can be applied. Now, way back in episode 33, Lean Safety, I recommended some good books that can help you out. It kind of touches on what we've been talking about the last several episodes on safety management systems. But another great resource, by the way, is TapRoot. I've talked about TapRoot in a different episode, so I would go ahead and check out TapRoot, another great resource, as well as a couple of books besides Lean Safety, but also Pre-Accident Investigation by Todd Conklin. That's a great book. I have this one as well. We went through, human organizational performance, or HOP training, to be a HOP coach for a former employer. And that book is filled with some great insight. So be sure to check those out. But remember, whatever books, videos, programs you choose to read or concepts you want to follow, if all you're getting is a strategic overview of these principles, you're going to need to follow that up with tactical training to be able to execute on those concepts or ideas, if that makes sense, right? To be able to use the right tools and techniques for, a given situation. So, hit up LinkedIn, ask your network how they're applying these concepts, ask for help. That's one way to get started. So, you have to be strategic and tactical at the same time. It isn't enough to just get the high-level strategic overview. You want to make sure that you can actually execute on those things. There is one thing I want to share about Conklin's book that has stuck with me for a while. And, there's a lot about that book that'll stick with you. But one of my favorites is the quote, "Safety is not the absence of events. It is the presence of defenses." That is so true. So keep that in mind as we go forward, that at the end of the day, how strong are your defenses? Are you able to assess those, or the absence of defenses that you should have had? When we get into root cause analysis and getting into fixing and solving process issues and organizational failures, keep that in that context in mind as well. So let's get into a definition of root cause analysis. So here I'm going to reference TapRoot, okay? One reference. I'm going to reference two organizations. One is TapRoot. If you're not familiar with who TapRoot is, for over 30 years or so, they've started research into human performance and best-in-class incident investigations and root cause analysis systems that were available at the time. So they took all that knowledge and have been using it to build a systematic investigation process with a I guess you can call it a coherent investigation philosophy. What they've done is, they applied it out in the field, refined the system, and in 1991, they wrote the first TapRoot Manual that put all of this experience together and have, going forward, put it into an investigation system. And I have no affiliation with TapRoot. I don't have any ties to them, any way, shape, or form. So I have no affiliate links or anything like that, okay? Now, according to TapRoot, a definition of root cause analysis is as follows. the systematic process of finding the knowledge or best practice needed to prevent a problem. Now, what root cause analysis tools or methods should you use? That's the trick, right? And they have some guidance. So I'm going to read what they published about, how to help you pick the root cause analysis system you should use. They have like 6 steps of your typical approach. And then from these, you can kind of determine or decide, okay, here's what I'm going to need in order to support these 6 steps. 1, you need to understand what happened, right? That's very important because you can't understand why an accident or incident occurred if you don't understand how it happened. And before that, you need to know what happened. So you need to understand what happened. Number 2, you need to identify the multiple causal factors. This is the how, okay, that caused that problem. Now, your root cause analysis system should have tools to help you identify these points that will be the start of finding root causes. Number 3, then you're going to need to dig deeper to find out each of the causal factors of the root causes. Does that make sense? So you kind of let you go deeper, right? So these are the causes of human performance, equipment reliability issues, things like that. As far as Taproot goes, through their experience, they found that investigators, even experienced investigators, still need guidance, right? Some sort of system to help them consistently identify root causes of human performance and equipment reliability issues and things that I mentioned. And that guidance should be part of the root cause analysis system. You can go through courses and get books and things like that, but you have to have a sort of, it's got to be repeatable, it's got to be consistent. And it's going to help guide you. And because, we all know it's important that the root cause analysis tool actually finds fixable causes of human error, organizational deficiencies, things like that, without placing blame, which that is a major cause of failed root cause analysis. Number 4, if it's a major issue, right, you're going to go beyond the specific root causes of the particular incident. So for major investigations, you should look one level deeper for generic or systemic causes of each of the root causes. Not every root cause will have a generic cause, but you can certainly identify the generic cause of a root cause. You're going to be able to develop corrective action that will eliminate the whole class of problems as a result, if that makes sense. So thus, your systematic process should guide you to find generic causes for major investigations. Like an example would be if you continuously find that you lack proper equipment or maintenance of equipment. It might be funding. Budget might be your generic, like overall budget. As an organization, we don't really know how to set up an operation or operational budgets, right? Or something like that, or funding. So if you were able to figure that piece out and plan ahead and get some operating capital, then that would solve a lot of the other problems down the road. So that's sort of one example, I guess. Okay, so number 5, root cause analysis is useless if you don't develop effective corrective actions or fixes that will prevent repeat incidents. And Taproot has seen that investigators may not be able to develop effective fixes for problems that they haven't seen or fixed before. So they recommend your root cause analysis system have guidance for developing effective fixes. So you're going to, either way, no matter what you use, you're going to want to be able to network with other folks and do some research as to, how some problems have been fixed in other organizations or in other plants, other departments, inside and outside your organization. And number 6, finally, you will need to get management approval to make the changes to prevent, repeat problems. So your root cause analysis system, whichever one you use, should include tools to effectively present what you have found and the corrective actions to management so they can approve the resources needed to make the change happen. So there's a total, like a system or process you should follow from beginning to end. Now, this sets up sort of, if you went through all and you read the blog on this episode, you'll see them listed out. But when you read through all these 6 items, you'll be able to see, okay, we need forms for this, tools for that, we need training to be able to do this, you're going to be able to see what areas of your system, using air quotes here, system, that you need to put in place. Now, another take on this is that root cause analysis involves investigating the patterns of negative effects, finding hidden flaws in the system. And you also have to discover specific actions that could have contributed directly and indirectly to the problem. So this often means that root cause analysis reveals more than one root cause. So Taproot knows this. Conklin talks about this. I'll mention later on in this episode when I wrap this up. I plan to mention some other things, but the bottom line, what I'm trying to say here is this explains root cause analysis. The title lends itself to criticism by some. Okay, it implies one root cause when we clearly know that's not the point. That's not the intent of this process. RCA, or root cause analysis. Actually, root cause fault, RCFA, is also a variant of this, but they all get to the same place, which is finding the multiple causes or potential contributors to an incident. So, when I mentioned gurus, and I mentioned it in the last episode, I call these folks word nerds. These are the gurus I'm referring to, right? Not the ones I mentioned earlier in this episode. I mean, they obviously understand this and help shape our industry, but the ones that I'm referring to, you can tell who they are. They've been able to take this out of context. They take the term literally, right? Meaning instead of using their brains a little bit and just understanding that it is a catchphrase that we use, and they miss the meaning or spirit of the phrase, and that's what's important. So that's what I want to communicate to you in this. When we say root cause analysis, it's important that you understand that is just a label. It's a phrase, and it has been misused, redefined. And another thing that's important, there are folks that are using root cause analysis tools, and they're using the wrong tools. They're doing it in the wrong way. And those are folks that have been poorly trained and don't understand the purpose and intent, what we're after. We shouldn't let that ruin root cause analysis. Root cause analysis isn't the problem per se. I think as safety professionals, we can do a much better job at educating our workforce, our organizations, and partnering with the lean practitioners in our organizations and collaborating when teaming with them on helping to better train and develop supervisors, managers, and even business leaders in this area. Okay. So there's my pitch for you guys. Okay. So moving on, I want to give you, I talked about Taproot as one example of an organization that has helped define, root cause analysis and what it is. But another example of an organization that is focused on this topic is ASQ, the American Society for Quality. Formerly, you may have heard of them or know them as the American Society for Quality Control, but ASQ is the new name. They are a knowledge-based global community of quality professionals, nearly 80,000 members, dedicated to promoting and advancing quality tools, principles, and practices in their workplaces and communities. So they've got a pretty deep knowledge of root cause analysis, and maybe their focus is in a different area or aspect of quality. But think about this. If any group has figured out root cause properly, and again, I could always give you some bad examples. I'm talking about the exceptions to those. I think it's the standard, actually. I think most people get it. The exception are the ones we always read about on LinkedIn posts and social media and in articles, okay? But I think the standard is what we're discussing here in this episode. And these quality folks, they get that if they want to eliminate poor quality, unplanned stop in work due to equipment breakdown, malfunction, things like that, they've figured out how to get to the root cause and contributing factors to those. And they have some deep knowledge of some of these tools that we could probably use in safety. So look, collaborate, share. You may not like some of the things, the application of some of the tools that they have, but that's why we have to roll up our sleeves and do the hard work, right? We have to work together on this. So ASQ. So what do they say about root cause analysis? Well, I found an article published back in 2004. I have a link in the show notes. Again, Spotify listeners, I apologize. Links do not work in Spotify show notes. Go to the website for this episode to find those. So what they say is, and this is a quote, I'm going to read directly from the article. It's kind of lengthy. It's a little too lengthy for me to summarize, but I'll read directly. Simply stated, RCA is a tool designed to help identify not only what and how an event occurred, but also why it happened. Only when investigators are able to determine why an event or failure occurred, they will be able to specify workable corrective measures that prevent future events of the type observed. Understanding why an event occurred is the key to developing effective recommendations. Imagine an occurrence during which an operator is instructed to close valve A. Instead, the operator closes valve B. Typical investigation would probably conclude operator error was the cause. This is an accurate description of what happened and maybe how it happened. However, if the analysis stops there, you have not probed deeply enough to understand the reasons for this incident. Therefore, they do not know what to do to prevent it from occurring again. In the case of the operator who turned the wrong valve, we are likely to see recommendations such as retrain the operator on the procedure, remind all operators to be alert when manipulating valves, or emphasize to all personnel that careful attention to the job should be maintained at all times. The good old pay attention, corrective action. Okay, getting back into it here. Such recommendations do little to prevent future occurrences. Generally, mistakes do not just happen, but can be traced to some well-defined causes. Note that's plural. In the case of the valve error, we might ask, was the procedure confusing? Were the valves clearly labeled? Was the operator familiar with this particular task? The answers to these and other questions will help determine why the error took place and what the organization can do to prevent recurrence. In the case of the valve error, example recommendations might include revising the procedure or performing procedure validations to ensure references to valves match the valve labels found in the field. Identifying root causes is the key to preventing similar recurrences. An added benefit to an effective RCA is that, over time, the root causes identified across the population of the occurrences can be used to target major opportunities for improvement. Okay, so some things that ASQ brought up that I thought were interesting, and they kind of contradict this movement. I wouldn't even call it a movement. I see it every once in a while, but it's enough to give me pause, and that is this battle against the word why. Okay, it confuses me a little bit. I mean, why fight see, I can't even say it without using the word. I mean, I get it. It can be used in a negative way, right? Like, why did you do that? But tone and inflection play into this just as much, okay, as the words you choose, how you say it and how you approach it. Everything from nonverbal, your body language, which is what 80+ % of communication is nonverbal, how you approach a worker or how you approach the situation, how you come across, your tone and inflection is probably what's causing this problem. And what you are after. So it's internal. It's not the why is not the problem. The word why isn't the problem in my opinion. I'm sort of working this out. So we know that it isn't the reason for asking is to fix blame. We know that. We're all trained to think that way. We all talk about that. Very few safety professionals would say otherwise. And the ones that do, they're not very good. And, we're not hearing from them anyway. I mean, if you have ever heard a child ask why, and of course repeat it 25 times, it's funny, but you probably know they're just trying to understand the world around them, right? They're curious. And so that's a very natural question. That word is easy to say, one syllable, why. We don't discourage children from learning more about the world around them and asking why. But as adults, we do for some reason. And as adults, we're supposed to be smarter than them. We're supposed to be able to use logic and reason, right? You think we would have figured that out. So instead of hating on the word why, shouldn't we spend more time training and educating on the proper use of it and saying, hey, look, asking why is okay. Why we're asking why. See, you can't get away from it. I think it's a futile effort to try to squash the use of the word why. I don't know. So maybe an example would help. So if any of you have heard of Simon Sinek, he's best known for popularizing the concept of why and wrote a book called Start With Why. And he did his first TED Talk in 2009. It was the third most popular TED video of all time. And he talked about the importance of why before how and what. And he gave an example. And he's talking about it more of in business and leadership concept. But I'll try to make the connection here. And it may not be a perfect fit, but I'll let you all be the judge of that. I'm sure you'll roast me online anyway with feedback, which is fun, by the way. I like hearing your feedback. But he talked about it in the context of businesses, leadership, and he gave the example of Apple, the company. Why is it that Apple, they're so much more successful than other tech companies? They have the same access to the same talent pool, same consultants, same media, but why are they so special? You wouldn't explain this by describing what they make or even how they make those devices. But the why gets to their core purpose, which then determines how they make what they make. Remember the Taproot approach, right? And ASQ, sound familiar? In order to understand what happened, how it happened, why it happened, it goes in order. So you might be saying, all right, the context of the TED Talk is completely different when it comes to workplace safety accidents. Okay, maybe you're right. But in both cases, the reason they're asking why is the same. It seeks a deeper understanding of potential root causes or drivers or motivators, either for incidents or motivators or core values for why we exist as a business. Right? Instead of explaining how something happened or even simply describing what happened in a single word or phrase, right? So the way I've been able to describe this to others is what happened is there was a fire in the furnace room. How it happened is combustible material was stored too close to the furnace. Why it happened? Well, we haven't established a fire prevention program or an effective housekeeping program, updated roles and responsibilities as a result of that, and assigned accountability, conducted and tracked training, developed a tracking system, and then inspected and audited and reviewed to ensure that those were being followed and maintained. We don't have any of that. That's why combustible materials were able to be stored too close to the furnace, which led to the fire. Okay, generic example, but you get the what, how, and why in that order, okay? Why is much deeper, okay? So I don't think we serve our industry well by trying to force people to redefine common terms that aren't natural to us, okay? That I think it's quite opposite. Let's take what feels natural in that order. What happened? A fire in the furnace room. How it happened? Material stored too close to the furnace. Why it happened? We lack basic policies, programs, procedures, communication, accountability, roles, descriptions, training, all those things that we need to put in place to stop a fire from happening in the furnace room, okay? Then that's the why, the deep understanding of why it happened. I think we should focus on proper application of root cause analysis tools and techniques rather than trying to redefine terms because a few people have misused them or there's some bad actors out there. Talk about managing by exception. So use the word why, don't use the word. I mean, look, whatever you do, just get to that deeper understanding as to all the potential causes and contributors to an incident. It was important for me to cover this topic, to define it properly, because it is so critical to continuous process improvement, which is the foundation of a safety management system, which, like I said at the beginning, kicked this whole series off to begin with a few episodes ago. All right. Final thoughts. My thoughts. Before I wrap this up, I want to get this off my chest. I mentioned it earlier. I've gotten a lot of feedback from LinkedIn, a lot of direct messages. A lot of people, were kind. They agreed with me, but I don't know if maybe they got confused when I called out some gurus. Remember, I'm using the term gurus with quotes here. These aren't the people that we've come to know and understand as professionals in our industry that contribute to the conversation, our continued development of our profession. I'm talking about, and you know who I'm talking about. You know who these are. And I don't even have names off the top of my head, but everyone gets hung up on the words. I mean, yes, they matter to an extent, but someone with a high EQ, extremely self-aware, is going to be able to understand the context, the spirit, and we should expect that in our profession. So when you say root cause analysis, right, or we say 5 why, and then I see people roll their eyes. Yes, 5 why has been used across the board. I still see accident reports that people send to me, companies send to me, and it'll have a 5 why on there, and I'm like, why would you put a 5 why on there? Honestly, because that gets us to root. No, actually, it doesn't apply to all incidents and accidents and types of situations. It is just one tool. It has a very specific use. It's practical in certain cases, but a fundamental understanding of that is what will fix 5 why, not getting rid of the tool. Fishbone, what if, FEMA, bow tie, causal maps. I mean, they're all tools in the tool, but that's like saying we should get rid of wrenches because some people will use it as a hammer. So we shouldn't mention the word wrench. We shouldn't have wrenches in anybody's toolbox. Not true. Not true. We need all the tools in the toolbox. We need better training and understanding on the practical application of these tools, what they are good for and not good for. So that's sort of my approach that I wanted to take on this. I've even read posts saying stuff like, some of it's like, thanks, Captain Obvious. Look, I get it. We're all in different places and we're all professionals and we all support each other. And so sometimes you'll come across people that are in different places in their career and thinking and learning. And so I'm not picking on any one person. So what I'll say is I've read posts, and I've read multiple posts from different people. It isn't just one person, but this was a theme that got kicked around for about a month before I stopped seeing it regularly on my activity feed from different people. And it was this whole, you shouldn't do traditional accident investigation because traditional accident investigation starts at the incident and you're going to be skewed. You're already going to know what happens if you start at the end. So you need to start at the beginning. Wait, what? What are you talking about? If this approach is based on the fact that we're flawed and we're going to bring a bias into the investigation since we already know what happened, don't you think those same flaws and biases will be present regardless of where you start? You already know what happened. That's my whole thing. If I know a fire started in the furnace room and I start at that point where the fire occurred and I try to work my way back, what biases am I introducing that aren't going to be present if I stop and go, okay, let's talk to people in the area and say, start at the beginning and of your workday, and I'm going to be looking for things that they're describing that could have contributed to that because I'm biased in the sense that I knew a fire started. So the context in which I'm listening to them describe their day at the beginning, before the incident occurred, what led up to it, the context, the filter through which I hear everything is going to be, could that have done it? Could that have done it? Could that have done it? I mean, I'm going to be biased either way. Humans are flawed. So that's why, like about Taproot is a consistent, repeatable approach that forces us to cover all of our bases so that we don't go case by case and have it take on a life of its own, driven by what I think and feel should or could or probably happened, right? So I don't know. I think that we were all trained that way to begin with, right? For like, here's an example. I just thought of this. Look at the OSHA 301 form. I think we could all agree that if you're just using the 301 form, you're not even in the zip code of getting to potential root causes. But even that form, how long that thing's been around? What's the first box? where you have to actually freeform write, describe any aspect of the event. What's the first box, the first question? The very first one. It isn't starting after the event, explain what happened. No, the first question is, word for word, what was the employee doing just before the incident occurred? Describe the activity, as well as the tools, equipment, and material the employee was using. Be specific. Okay, so even the worst case example that we can come up with, which is that 301 form, right, which we all agree is just terrible, starts before the event. And oh, by the way, starting at the beginning is just a technique. It's just one technique you can deploy that you can use to get to. And as a matter of fact, you're probably going to be doing both, because starting at the beginning and getting somebody to tell you the story, right, air quotes, which you have to do, by the way. I'm not dogging that. Trust me, I'm not. I'm just dogging like how people talk about it, like we didn't know. But consider this. There are also types of accidents where you're going to need to start with the current state and walk backwards. And I'm going to recall my old fire days. If there were a fire and no one was around, who are you going to ask? Are you going to ask the fire how you started your day today? No. You're going to have to establish a timeline. You're going to get to some mechanical parts of accident investigation here. And I can hear or feel the collective eye rolls already. But look, if you happen to have video available, guess where you're going to start? You're going to either fast forward or rewind to the point where you start to see smoke or flame, and then you're going to pinpoint that point in time, and you're going to work from there left to right. That's just, I'm telling you right now, I know that's what you're going to do. So working backwards in this case may be needed to establish a timeline. And from there, you can determine at what point in the process it started, what stage of the cycle that the machinery was in, or what was going on at the time, environmental conditions, temperature, time of day, all of that. The reason you're investigating, right, is also going to drive how you approach this investigation. So that case was a fire. But think about this. The criminal investigations, insurance or fraud or liability, all those are examples why you're investigating will drive your approach, your technique, and the tools you use. Of course, at the beginning, we're talking about safety management systems, and we're talking about root cause analysis. We're talking about continuous improvement. We're talking about safety pros inside an organization seeking a deeper understanding as to the organizational deficiencies and human performance aspects and how we can make our processes more resilient to human error, how we can go through that pre-accident investigation process Conklin talks so well about. I get that, but I'm saying in general, we have a lot going on here. It's not as black and white as we would like it to be, but that's why we really, really, really need to be good at this. We have to get all the training in the world. So I will also add that a couple of more things, and I'll wrap this up. I can't remember what class I was taking. It is so long ago. The edition of the book they used was a 1988 edition. And it was called Modern Accident Investigation. And yes, in 1988, it was modern. But even then, the author, Ted Ferry, he had several chapters. I still have the book. You know what? I'll post a picture of it in the show notes for this episode, by the way. I'll post a picture of it. He had several chapters. So Chapter 4, Human Aspects. Chapter 7, Systems Investigation. Chapter 14, Where Did Management Fail? All along the way, discussing the relationship between people, environment, and systems. Okay, 1988, people. We have come a long way in many areas. That is certain, okay? And we have known for a long time that this approach, a systems approach, looking at all aspects, that is the best way to truly root out all potential contributors so that we may make smarter decisions moving forward. We're continuing to learn more about all of this stuff. Look, the 60s, look at the Mort process, okay? M-O-R-T. If you haven't figured this one out, look this one up. It's interesting. It defines a mishap as the unwanted transfer of energy that produces injury to persons, damage to property, degradation of ongoing processes, and their unwanted losses. So the Mort analysis, that's based on the concept that all accidents or accidental losses, right, arise from two sources. One, specific job oversights and omissions, and two, the management systems factors that controlled the job. It's frequently used to solve other management problems as well. More the 60s, okay? So I could go on, but I think you get my point. Become a student of these approaches. Learn about the history of this topic. Our industry will continue to adapt as we learn more about the interactions humans have with systems and organizations. But I wanted to tackle this topic since it is so critical to supporting safety management systems and how we execute this, right? It's all in the execution, root cause analysis, continuous process improvement. It's going to drive every improvement we make to our people, processes, policies, procedures, how leaders continue to develop the lens through which they view their businesses. So I want to hear from you. I want to hear your take. How do you use continuous process improvement and root cause analysis to support your safety management system? Have you struggled with any of the tools? And which tools? And where did you find help? Share that with me. I'd love to share it with other listeners. Are you confused about which tool is ideal for which situation or problems for which you're trying to solve? Let's talk about it. Reach out via LinkedIn, shoot me an email. Again, links are in the show notes. And until the next Safety Pro Podcast episode, as always, be safe.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Safety Pro Podcast, powered by iReportSource, the all-in-one digital safety solution. For info on how you can request a free demo on all the capabilities of iReportSource to streamline your business's safety management system, head over to thesafetypropodcast.com. We look forward to helping you manage safety on the next episode of the Safety Pro Podcast.